Beep, no squeaking. This is brought to you by macOS rather than Windows, so hopefully we won't get a reboot. I'm here as a stand-in for Gavin Millard this afternoon, who I believe is known to some of you here from previous occasions. Gavin's my boss. He's the director of sales engineering at Tenable network security for EMEA, and he's given me some slides to present. Now, anyone who knows Gavin knows that he's an outrageous hipster. So I thought initially he was going to get me to present this through the medium of contemporary dance. But no, he's given me some slides regarding the mysteries of security interpreted through retro gaming, 8-bit style. So Gavin, bless him, I'm sure if he was here he'd be doing a much more fluent job of this, but he's briefed me. He said, you have to go there and talk to them about what we do, and fortunately I'll back you up with some Space Invaders. So clearly what he's trying to bring out here is know the attack path, because what we're going to talk about through the various lessons that we've learnt over the years through observing Space Invaders is that attack vectors can be equally as tricky. And there are a number of lessons which he's illustrated quite cleverly with similar advanced graphics. But what he's talking about is the attack path. Now, he's abstracted this because often when presentations are done like this, somebody's going to trot out here and go, cyber kill chain, you all know what that is. But he's done an abstraction here to give us a way of saying it doesn't really matter whether there's somebody's gone cyber ninja on one of your users and track them down through every social media known to man and God, and set about putting some very plausible content, some collateral for their attack together, whether that's going to be through a site that's owned or through some phishing or whatever. There are commonalities which we're to be aware of. And this is 101 stuff for us, but it's surprising. My job is a pre-sales engineer, and I have to follow salespeople around into meetings with some very senior guys in enterprise for whom this is new. Because as far as they're concerned, their job is to have shopping lists and to look in the top right-hand side of the Gartner quadrant to figure out which one to buy. They don't have an appreciation that layers in defense are all about understanding where the danger and the threat is. They think that security is obtainable through shopping. And of course, the vendor community does nothing to disabuse of that at the sales level, and it falls to the poor pre-sales engineer to kind of pick the threads up and help to weave something which is secure out of the random collection of stuff that they've bought, including hopefully our stuff, of course. So being aware of attack paths and being aware that there are some inherent limitations to the technologies that we can deploy. So threat intelligence, very useful, and it's a very handy community of research out there which is providing us information about command and control, networks, IPs of poor reputation, bad URLs, etc. And you can get these feeds. However, if a cyber criminal organisation is targeting your users and has spent hours and hours tracking someone down to construct the world's best phishing attack, the last thing they're going to do is have that attack go back to a control node in China or Russia. They're going to spin up a brand new AWS that's going to be clean and have no history. So we have to be aware that threat intelligence is not the be-all and end-all, no matter what a threat intelligence vendor might say. And Tenable has threat intelligence built in, so I'm not just dissing the opposition here. I am being aware that some features of some security platforms are only that, just some features of a necessary whole. So, how do we, and this is, God bless him, Gavin, with his, look, this is even animated. So, he's talking about the advantages of building a suitable security posture for your organisation. And this is about understanding where the weak points are in your network and what are the things that we've got in our bag of tricks that we can stitch together to make the bad guys have as hard a time as possible securing foothold. So the guy on the left has got great big gaps, the guy on the right nice and tight. That's the theory. So what we're saying is identify and prioritise the treatment of weaknesses. And what are the techniques that are available to do that? What are the things, how do we get our our customers, our enterprises, to recognise that there is work to do beyond deploying X, Y, Z product. And how do we have an integrated system of defence which alerts us to the possibilities of being owned. And one of the things, this is Gavin's great message that I think, that when this really stood off the deck for me when he was presenting it. He said, stop focusing on the 0 day. There's a huge amount of money being spent on 0 day defence, which may or may not be defending you against anything. It's wild smoke and mirrors. And the truth of the matter, the sad fact is that these enterprises need to fix the 100 day, and he's only put 100 day to contrast with 0. If you look at the Verizon data breach incident report year in, year out, check out how much money is lost due to vulnerabilities that were extant before the year 2000. Ridiculous things like default SNMP community strings. Totally ridiculous. And that's costing enterprises huge amounts of money. And yet, if you go and confront the guys in the security practices at the senior level, they will be all about buying the latest, greatest widget. They will be wined and dined and entertained and seduced by these new technologies. And that's endemic in the industry. We like our toys. So how do we reassign that tendency into something more productive? How do we get them to concentrate on the really boring? How do we get them to do the basic things well and to do it consistently? Again, back to 8-bit gaming. So we're now going to start focusing on another hobby horse of Gavin's, the idiot user. Now, Gavin had actually a really good point to make here, and he would have said this a little bit better than me for sure. But blaming the users, educating the users for awareness. There's something that happens, perfectly sensible, intelligent people, when they finish their commute in the morning and walk into the office. They're not dealing within the context of their own email. They haven't got the same level of personal concern over security. A switch goes off in their head, and that's for a number of reasons. They've just gone from a very simple domestic environment into an extremely complex enterprise environment. It's too much for them. That's fine. Redouble the effort, re-educate, and all will be well. Well, sadly, no, because something else has happened. They've got a false sense of security. They've walked into a very complicated environment, and they feel safe. And this is where the weakness to the attack for the users occurs. And Gavin's point is, it's a bit like blaming the chickens in the hen house for having been killed by the fox. Who let the fox in, is the question. Or how do you protect Princess Peach in this case? So, it's there. Client-side vulnerabilities are a major threat. They're the target of choice. And sadly, enterprises focusing on server infrastructure, critical infrastructure, domain controllers, what have you, they say these are the crown jewels, this is where we're going to focus our millions and millions of dollars. And too often the vulnerabilities which are on the desktops are ignored. The voice over IP networks, it's okay, they're only phones. Are they phones? Did you check? Is there anything else in those environments? Too hard. Let's not go there. Let's focus on the servers. Let's focus on the data center. That's where all our money is, right? Well, not so much. If your people's environment is owned, you can say goodbye to everything else because they're inside the perimeter. So have a plan. Oh, it's lagging a bit. Have a plan for your remote workers. And this is something which is increasing, the perimeterless network. So I've been doing IP networking for more years than I care to remember, back in the 1990 and frozen to death, when I was busy IP enabling such wonderful networks as BT's corporate network. And security wasn't even a thought, let alone an afterthought. And it came up and bit people like BT hard early on, and there are some good practices there. But that was in the day when people would walk into the office and be totally surrounded by a network and very rarely stray out of it, because in 1995, I think there were only 5 web pages to look at anyway. And that's not the case now. Now, I work for a network security company, and I actually can dispense with my VPN connection back to the mothership, back to the home network, almost completely. There is only one function that I need now, and that's to be able to cut demo licenses for my customers. Otherwise, I can operate entirely out with. I have a tool, Salesforce.com. I have Google Apps. I'm not enshrined in that network anymore, and that's where our users are at, and their vulnerability and the threat has changed. It's shifted location. That goes without saying. I mean, that's an interesting point though, right? So we can talk a very interesting story about complex patterns of behaviour, about how do we solve the insoluble issue of users and protect them in this scary landscape, and how many Flash applications are we still using? Do we even know? How do we, what is there in the network that's threatening us? What is that level of enumeration? At what level of granularity do we understand what that corporate landscape still is? So yeah, we should kill Flash. Anyone got any ideas how to do that? And of course, if we dispense with all of these threats and we've solved them, there's still the possibility that your $10 million security platform is subverted through a very simple bribe to a disgruntled employee. And there is no technical fix for that, which is bringing the presentation to another sort of pivot point for Gavin. There are things, there are tools, there are processes, and there are people. And how do we get the right balance to ensure a level of security and its layers in defence? And spotting the behaviour, stopping the vandalism or the exfiltration or the removal of intellectual property or whatever it is that bad guy's done there and how it's arrived at. And he's going to tell us over and over again, Gavin, bless him, that it's just the foundations that are missing in 95% of these cases. It's not doing the basic things right. It's not having a handle on your inventory of hardware. It's not understanding that, knowing what your software platforms are, knowing exactly what it is that your business processes use in terms of outsourced, cloudified capabilities. Ignorance is the killer. So put a layer of knowledge into your security practice and things will automatically start to get better. They won't be perfect, but at least you haven't got great gaping holes at the foundational level. And that's doing things like auditing your machines. How do you know if you've got password aging, password complexity rules applicable to all machines? You have to go and check all of them. So there's a theory that, oh, we can cut corners, we can sample. Well, that's fine, but the foothold's out there for somebody on one of these machines sooner or later. That telnet listener is running on a router somewhere unless you go and check all of the devices. So, did that work? Yeah. So, this is the basic stuff. And this is if we can just, there's a lot more to do than this, but get a discovery process in place so that you can control that inventory. Enumerate the software. Understand how that software contributes towards the business processes, the enterprise tool sets, build projects, build platforms, support processes, and make money or deliver the service that the entity is looking to support. Understand your configuration state, and above all else, nail the vulnerabilities early and frequently. And when you've done this, prove that you've done it by having some really cool metrics in place. And doing the simple things is all very well and good, but how do you know you've done them? How do you know you've been consistent? And if you're finding it hard to do this, how do you go about providing information up into the other layers of management? Because you're saying, I'm not meeting these targets on monitoring, on analysis, on awareness, because I haven't got resource, or I've got too much legacy. We've got too many sticking points in the network. We need funding. When's it a good time to have a conversation with enterprise people about security? Never. When it's going well, you're invisible. When it's not going well, you're in trouble. Not a good time to ask for money anywhere along those lines. But resources and support is needed. So having an effective set of metrics that talk a language to the guys who've got the purse strings is essential, or otherwise we won't have the wherewithal to even conduct our basic, simple best practices. And a nice glib statement from Gavin here. Obviously, if you can't measure information technology, you can't control it. And certainly, if you've got no control because no measurement, then you're not going to be able to improve. And Lord, all of us need to be able to improve. Well, speaking from an enterprise perspective, there are no, well, the record in the media speaks for itself. People who should certainly know better, talk, etc. And the big multiples that are caught out year after year because they're not doing simple things properly. And this brings us to another cheesy graphic, of course, and the 360-degree view. And this is a hobby horse of Gavin's that he's out on the stomp, taking this message to far and wide across the whole of his patch, which is ranging out as far east as Dubai, into the Nordics, and it's about how come if you're doing these things you're still getting hurt? How come if you've got best practices coming out your ears you've still got a problem? And it's down to periodic scanning. Now, Tenable is mostly known for Nessus, which is used by people like NCC, penetration testers, and the Nessus scanner is a pretty much essential part of their toolkit. I think it's got something like 85% market share of consultants worldwide for finding the raw materials of what it is they're going to go on and do. It saves them lots of time. Enterprises are aware of this, so we sell them Nessus as well, and they build that into their fabric and they scan. They do periodic scanning, and Nessus is a very good scanner, as you'd expect me to say. But maybe what I wouldn't be expected to say is that it's just not enough. So even though we're out there spreading the good word, do scanning, scan everything all the time, it's simply not enough. And if we talk about, referring back to the virtual machine talk we had earlier, how on earth are you going to track your shadow infrastructure on interval scanning? I say, okay, I'm going to scan everything Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. I can send emails to my users, get your laptops plugged in, I'm going to scan them. Don't plug it in. Some of them will, some of them won't, some of them can, some of them can't. What about DevOps spinning up VMs on the fly off of an image which could be 18 months, 2 years old, still full of all the silly SSL stuff? Who knows? It never gets scanned, it just appears in the network. And if you've got one guy creating one machine for 4 hours and he's in a team of 20, and that team is then replicated around the world, you've got a big enterprise that's running literally hundreds, maybe thousands of devices which are never scanned and are propagating vulnerabilities and are just ripe for the plucking when that malware is circulating. And it's outside of the scope of the security practice. So it's not enough. Malware. Why on earth do we keep getting hit by malware? That's a good question. And Gavin's obviously observed that it should be easy to restrict it and control it, but it's just not the case. So, audit your malware controls continuously. Have some malware controls in place, please do. And how do we do things continuously? How do we do things in real time? Well, we don't. It's impossible. But near real time should be an objective rather than quarterly scanning. And we do that through implementing packet capture tools to do analysis on connectivity, network behavior, log scanning, and of course, as a vendor, I've got a whole library of thousands of plugins to look at all of those behaviors, scan all those logs. The logs that were referred to that never get cleared away, the Windows logs, well, it's very handy to have a device which is continuously monitoring through the WMI interface, grabbing all that stuff, centralizing it. And when you start to look at control frameworks, like PCI, for example, now, I'm not a great fan of standards-based accreditation because it gives you a false sense of security. On the day the guy stamps your ISO 27001, on the day you get your PCI compliance, you're not secure, you're not safe, you're compliant. It's a minimum set of standards, and it doesn't anticipate everything in your network, in your environment. It only generally solves problems across the piece, and it's there for the benefit of the people sponsoring this, the merchant acquirers who are at risk because of people's leaky networks and credit card data. They require you to hit a PCI level of compliance if you're offering a certain number of transactions above a certain level. There are huge gaps in this. I mean, who knows? I mean, if they're basing what you must do to put controls in place on numbers of transactions, and nobody's actually looking at what the value of those transactions are, God help us. But getting down to a continuous level of control, and now I'm going to say, now do buy threat intelligence, having dissed it earlier on, because it's layers of defense. And being able to understand if you've captured all this information and you don't correlate it back to what's out in the big bad world and don't understand your threat intelligence, well, shame on you. So, yes, Gavin and Barry, collect coins, this is great. What does he mean? Here's the thing, that as I alluded to earlier, I don't touch the corporate network. The corporate network has been infested with an Internet of Things, whatever that is, a whole bunch of stuff. The use of the BYOD, bring your own disaster to work. It's prevalent, and, well, I mean, I guess there were two types of enterprise when the iPhone came out. There was the one that said, oh, look at this is a wicked platform, look at the creativity, look at the innovation, we're going to be able to do wonderful things, and the other guy said, that's a $500 exfiltration tool. Great, but you can't stop it, so it's there, it's part of reality, and have controls in place. The cloud, and it's seductive. Cloud economics is taking over. I mean, people's firewalls will be running the cloud shortly. You're seeing the change that's happened in the disruption in content delivery networking through people like Encapsula and Cloudflare, and they've revolutionized the delivery of content. This is now being reflected back into enterprise security, and it's just an inversion of that infrastructure. So big, expensive, clunky MPLS networks where the enterprises are locked into service providers, are equipped with firewalls at their perimeters. They're sliding those devices up the string onto the cloud, and then they can dispense with the MPLS altogether. They can normalize on GRE or IPsec connections into these devices and hand off all that responsibility and all that control. And it's a scary place. And there's a generation of people in enterprise who won't do it because they like to walk into the data center, see the flashing lights, go and kick the machine. There, I'm safe, I've got one of these. But that generation will inevitably go and play golf, and the next generation will come along and see absolutely no harm whatsoever in taking all these devices into the cloud because the economic question for it is compelling. And there are security benefits to it as well. If you're part of a community that is on a security platform of millions of users in thousands and thousands of enterprises, then articulation of things like threat intelligence become ever more powerful. And so there's a compelling event there to join the party or be left on your own, managing everything yourself at your own perimeter. Virtual machines have already spoken about. So the complexity and the problem space for security professionals and the security leaders in enterprise is ever harder. And the tendency is to say, no, stop. We can't do this, we can't secure it, we can't protect it. And the problem there is that that's an end to innovation. And we've got to stop saying no. We've got to give options. And when Gavin showed me this slide, I thought, what's the umbrella for? Oh, parachute, I get it. Right, he says, now what you're doing is your CEO is running off a cliff. What do you say? Do you grab hold of him and put your arms around him and say, no, you'll kill yourself, don't jump off the cliff? The CEO is running at 100 miles an hour. And you can say, no, we can't do this. Security says, no, we're not doing it. Or you can give them options. And there's something wrong here with this. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to click this and it'll probably... Anyway, the idea was that if they're Mary Poppins, probably the umbrella will do and they'll be safe. If they run off the cliff and they find that they suddenly can't run in thin air, at least they've got a parachute. Or if they're prepared to join you and put their hands in their pockets, you can build them a bridge the chasm, and they can carry on running across. And I've got a feeling that was exactly what Gavin was trying to say with that graphic that disappeared. So that's about not saying no, and it's about enabling. So recognising that the enterprise security landscape has changed out of all recognition from when these guys that are in charge, when they first came into IP networking back in the 90s, they're now being faced with things they just don't understand and challenges that are too big. But they've now also got to step up and say, okay, fine, we'll be your partners in taking this risk rather than stopping it. And the other side of that is that we've now got to say to them, stop chasing ghosts. Very well, yeah, we have a seance there. No, but the idea is that we need to be effective in what we're doing in terms of business rather than if I rewind back to what I was talking about earlier, part of this is being seduced into thinking that if I spend lots of money on sexy sandbox stuff, if I've got the mail platform on Rails, then everything's going to be fine, and just focus on those shopping lists, which is really nice for guys in big enterprises because that's the way everything's done. They've got colleagues who are looking after ERP, who are just basically writing check after check to SAP. They've got people at the CRM level writing checks to Salesforce or Microsoft if they're stupid. And seriously, Dynamics, terrible thing. But the point is that they're surrounded by peer organisations that are spending, and they've been put in. They have skills which align. They are, because they do own budgets, and people who own budgets go shopping, and we need to stop that mentality, and the next generation will be responsible for understanding that a shopping list is not a security process. So, which is this, the final slide. Understand the difference between, well, it's not the final slide, but finally, this is where we get to, is that they understand what's needed rather than what's wanted, and act accordingly. So, I've no idea how I'm doing for time, actually. I know that I'm probably going a bit fast, but that gives us some time for some questions and answers and things like that. But this summarises the message that I was sent along to provide. Understand the attack path, look at the endpoints, know what the endpoints are, be able to say with 100% certainty that 80% of my machines have been scanned and are compliant, or whatever those SLAs are that you can construct. Reduce your attack surface, manage out the legacy, etc. Nothing here is contentious or problematic, and thankfully it's all been brought to you through the means of retro gaming icons. So I think that after half an hour of rambling at you about Gavin's content, I'm hopefully giving you something that's illustrative and talks about what enterprise should be doing and some of the pitfalls which they're facing and still sadly not accommodating. So, with that, do we have any questions?